governance issues in the management of the scheme's affairs, at the inception, it was envisaged that the scheme would have challenges in liquidity and compliance with RBA requirements of 30-70% ratio due to the transferred assets being 100%. That in realization of this challenge, the sponsor appointed a carefully selected team of experts to form the Board of Trustees to be able to address this issue. That the Board of Trustees drafted a well-designed integrated strategic plan which gave a clear roadmap on how the scheme would grow and comply with RBA regulations within determined timelines. That due to designs of greed and desire to profit from prime land transferred to the scheme, the Board of Trustees were unceremoniously disbanded, having resisted to be enjoined in the Gold City project propagated by the sponsor, which finally collapsed. Thirdly, irregular and unconstitutional practices, including corruption and abuse of office, that after this disbanding of the Board of Trustees that was instituted earlier, another one was put in place, which unfortunately consisted of people who systematically stripped the scheme's assets through unscrupulous sale of assets, some through private treaties at exceedingly low market rates. That RBA, on its regulatory mandate, dissolved the Board of Trustees after members of the scheme sought its intervention. That RBA subsequently appointed an inspection team which gave their findings on 14th of November 2020 in part, and I quote, "The scheme was fraught with corruption, breach of trust, abuse of office, fraudulent disposal of assets, and other malpractices," end of quote. This led to the disbandment of the Board of Trustees. That the sponsor seemed to take advantage of the opportunity and began to appoint corporate trustees rather than have members being represented through the Board of Trustees. For 7 years, Alexander Forbes Financial Services Limited, now called Zamara, and who were until then providing actuarial services to the scheme, brought down this scheme to its knees, leaving it high and dry. That the members have made the best of efforts to have these matters addressed by relevant authorities, all of which have failed to give satisfactory response. That none of these issues raised in these petitions is pending in any court of law, constitutional, or any other body. Therefore, your humble petitioners pray to the Senate that, one, that it intervenes to ensure that the directive of the court issued on 11th of April 2013 are implemented. Two, that it intervenes and help the vulnerable pensioners who have not received their pensions for the last 12 months and are now experiencing both financial and psychological torture, especially with the current pandemic situation. And three, any other recommendations that the Senate may seem necessary on this matter. Signed this day, 14th day of June 2020, and it is signed by Mr. Washika, Mr. Jakaiti, Mr. Boynet, Mr. Simiu, Mr. Luka, Mr. Maina, and Mr. Ocheng. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, honorable senators, pursuant to Standing Order 231, I shall now allow comments, observation, or clarification in relation to the petitions for not more than 30 minutes. Senator Khaniri, what's your intervention?
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order to seek your direction. Mr. Speaker, the biggest thing that Kenyans are waiting from this House today is to see if we'll agree on the formula for sharing of revenue. Mr. Speaker, counties and the entire country is anxiously waiting for the outcome of this debate. I have gone through the order paper, Mr. Speaker, and as I came from my house, I was very sure that that was the business we were coming to discuss. Not to say that the other businesses are not important, but this is what Kenyans are waiting for at the moment. I have looked through the order paper, Mr. Speaker. I don't see that item, unless there is a supplementary order paper coming later on. I thought this was the most important business that is awaiting this House to determine. Mr. Speaker, I am seeking your direction on this matter. I'm not challenging the work of the House Business Committee. I know we have a very competent House Business Committee, but we expected as members that this will be the first and foremost business of this House today. Mr. Speaker, we are seeking your direction.
Thank you very much. I'm aware that this is a matter that the entire country is waiting for our direction. The matter was discussed in the House Business Committee. There was a small committee that was consulting so that a lot of consensus is built as much as possible. We had given them up to about 1:30 today to finalize, but unfortunately there are still areas that need to be finalized, and therefore the direction, and I know the leader of majority will be seeking to move a motion to adjust our calendar so that the matter is concluded on Thursday. Thursday at 2:30. Okay, Senator, it's better, that's the direction I've given. It's better we take a bit of time and agree than rush it and then we don't get a neat process. So it's guided. Locorio, Petronila on the petitions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to contribute to the motion by Senator Githiomi on the settlement of IDPs, especially those that are in camps. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of noise behind me.
Let's consult in low tones. Let's consult in low tones, not noise. Okay, proceed, Senator Petronila.
Okay, thank you, Speaker. I would like to contribute to the motion by Senator Githiomi and thank him to the petition by Senator Mudhiomi and thank him for bringing it to the House. Mr. Speaker, these IDPs have been there, some as far as 1997, 92, and not just the ones for 2007, 2008 electoral violence. Mr. Speaker, I would like also that we include, as we talk about resettlement of these IDPs, we include the IDPs that were reintegrated back into their homes or into their families, even during that time. Most of the reintegrated IDPs come from the Western and the Nyanza region, who have been neglected for so long in the resettlement of IDPs. So even as we look at that petition and the solutions to the resettlement of these IDPs, we consider the ones from Nyanza and Western who have never received any form of compensation, although they suffered a lot of loss during that electoral violence of 2007-2008. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Halaka Abshiro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the petition by Senator Githiomi regarding the IDPs. Mr. Speaker, we are seeing a really disturbing trend where the human rights, the rights of our citizens are actually being violated by the people or by the government that actually is supposed to be protecting and ensuring that there's respect and protection of the citizens. Mr. Speaker, while we know that this happened many years ago, it's now about 20 years, I think, or 18 to 19 years. How long does it take for these very simple, or numbers of people that are not even that many? And we're being told in Western Kenya, people are still not settled. IDPs all the way from 2007, 2008 are still on streets. Mr. Speaker, I think it's a shame for us as this House to preside over these kinds of violations of the rights of our citizens when we are just sitting here. Mr. Speaker, Article 43 of the Constitution clearly stipulates, and this country is also signatory to a lot of international laws and humanitarian norms. Mr. Speaker, I don't know at what point the humanitarian laws, the Constitution of Kenya will be upheld by the same people that are supposed to be protecting, the same people that are supposed to be not violating these things. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this is something that I know Senator Gidhiomi's committee, which I used to serve on, takes these things very seriously and make sure that we see to it that these violations are corrected. IDPs are all over this country, Mr. Speaker. There are those that are political IDPs, but there's also humanitarian IDPs in this country. In where we come from, every time there's a flood, every time there are locusts, every time there's insecurity, there are IDPs, left, right, and center, even in our county of Isiolo. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to look at the whole issue of displacements of population, because it has a bearing on the services that we provide, it has a bearing on security, it has a bearing on health indicators, Mr. Speaker. So we need to look at IDPs, both political and non-political, and in all parts of this country, and ensure that those violations are remedied and that the people that are supposed to be protecting them do the right thing. I support and I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wetangula Moses.
This history of IDPs in this country is an eyesore. Mr. Speaker, we have had IDPs ranging from the...
Let's consult in low tones. Order members. Let's consult in low tones, please.
Mr. Speaker, ranging from the 1992-93 politically instigated violence against citizens, 97, 207, and other times. In the process, Mr. Speaker, people have been violently uprooted from their properties and sent away to places that they have no affinity with. They became internally displaced persons. Mr. Speaker, in the last parliament, this House dealt with issues of IDPs almost every session. And information came to the floor, Mr. Speaker, that at the time the government had spent over 25 billion Kenya shillings to settle IDPs. It turned out in some of the inquiries we had, Mr. Speaker, that the money was actually shared between public servants, largely, leaving genuine IDPs from being settled. I believe this statement, this petition will end up in the committee chaired by the president of the petition himself, the distinguished Senator for Nyandarua, who is the chair of lands, because they're the ones dealing with settlement. Mr. Speaker, in doing so, they must also bring to this House the pertinent issues raised in the petition, where the petitioners are saying they lost their dignity, livelihoods, homes, and properties. To whom did they lose these properties?
What's your point of order, Senator Ephraim Maina?
Mr. Speaker, I am not intending to disrupt my friend, but he has made a statement here which should not just go unnoticed, that the money that was supposed to actually settle some of the people who are suffering, and we know of a figure of about 25 billion, was shared somehow among civil servants. And I find this, Mr. Speaker, if there is the slightest speck of truth, Mr. Speaker, I think we should actually, in this committee is doing whatever they are doing, be demanding action on that, on those people, because truly people are suffering, and we cannot have, if money was shared among civil servants. I remember my friend who was in the government, he may have better information, and he could help at this time to bring these people to book.
Mr. Speaker, my colleagues like Mutula Kilonzo can tell you that we have records of this House that showed that the bulk of the money was misappropriated. And the managers of that money were public servants. not private citizens. The records are there, Mr. Speaker. And the question I'm raising in relation to this petition, Mr. Speaker, is where there were political conflicts, like in parts of Rift Valley, people fled from their properties. Eventually, peace came back to the areas. Why hasn't the government enabled people to go back to their properties? Because your house may have been burned, the land can't have been burned. The land is there. Why hasn't the government helped people to go back to their properties? Or why hasn't the government appropriated that land to those who want to live in those hostile areas, to those who fled, and help them acquire land elsewhere so that they can be settled? Number two, Mr. Speaker, where you and I come from, and Senator Petronil has raised it, because of our cultural practices, people don't accept to go and live in polythene papers on markets as IDPs. They get integrated into homes of relatives. These are people who are still suffering, living in dignity. And the most shocking thing in the reports we have in this House, Mr. Speaker, and again, Senator Mutula Kilonzo is the one who brought the issue here when we were in the last parliament, when they were compensating IDPs, in some areas the government was paying IDPs 400,000 per family. In areas like Western and Nyanza, they were paying each family 10,000. Why this disparity? This House, Mr. Speaker, as the defender and protector of counties, their people and their governments, must bring this matter to a final end by getting the government to settle each and every person that lost their properties because of the misbehavior of politicians, to which the government must take responsibility, because the ultimate protection of every citizen and their property lies with government. And when the government fails to protect people, it must take responsibility, it must compensate people, it must settle people. And this is not a matter that we can compromise on. So I urge the committee, Mr. Speaker, not to limit themselves to the Nyandarua situation, but to look at the records available in this parliament and look elsewhere and see that we bring this matter to a finality once and for all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Then Senator Mwaruma can start leaving the other chamber. Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two issues, one on the petition of the IDPs. I want to say this issue has become a biggest problem in this country. I thought these are the matters that we have resolved as a government. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge the chair because Senator Wetangula has raised this issue, that you need also to look at the forest evictees and people who are displaced by agencies, not even through political, but other agencies that have what we call forest evictees. For example, Mr. Speaker, in areas of Serengonik and many other areas, there are many forest evictees, and Mr. Speaker, it has brought to my attention that today the court in Nakuru has ruled that forest evictions from Mau must be stopped forthwith by the Kenya Forest Service and also by the Ministry of Environment. Mr. Speaker, even as we discuss about the IDPs caused by political violence, we must look also at the forest evictees. Number two, Speaker, on the issue of landslide, because there was a petition that was brought 2 weeks ago, the issue of landslides also has become a problem. As somebody has said, when floods or locusts invest, we must look at that issue because the same people are also displaced. The floods that we saw in Nyando, in Nandi, a place called Cherondo in Tindre sub-county, they are always landslides.
Let's consult in order members. Let's consult in low tones. Observe social distancing. Okay, proceed. Yeah.
Thank you, Speaker. The issue I was raising is that we also have evictions that are caused by natural disasters, like the floods that we saw in Nyando, in Kisumu sub-county, we saw in Cherondo, in Tindre sub-county. There are many areas across the country that have been evicted by the disasters that the natural disasters happen. So, Mr. Speaker, as we look at the issue of evictees that were caused because of political violence, we must also, Mr. Speaker, look at the people that have been displaced because of natural disasters, because of forest evictees, that even in Molo the other day in Nakuru County, people were being infected even here in Kariobangi and many other areas across the country. Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge the Chair of Land, Senator Githiomi, to seize this matter and not narrow it down to only Nyandarua, but also include other counties and those 3 subsets of evictees that I've said. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of Twagetam, I want to say, Mr. Speaker, the issue of, it's so sad that even as we fight, you know, the other feature by one of the leading Citizen TV the other day, they were running a feature called We Can't Breathe, where an industry here in Nairobi was being accused of releasing and not regulating their emissions to the environment, Mr. Speaker. And that was saying we can't breathe. So we want also, even as the people of Twake area celebrate that they now have a dam to ensure the issues of loss of water, Mr. Speaker, we must look at the issue of pollution so that their health remains. Mr. Speaker, I think it is the right time that we need to call out the National Environment and Management Authority. NEMA has been sleeping on the job. There are so many cases across the country. From the one here in Nairobi about the other day in Machakos County, where they are releasing fumes and emission at night, but during the day they give it out and it was run well by media. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, you can see Twake, there are so many constructions happening across the country. But we want to call upon the NEMA, although we are aware NEMA, Mr. Speaker, do not have a substantive CEO at the moment. But even as they look for substantive CEO, the accountability of NEMA as provided by the law, they must be careful to ensure that they protect our people from pollution, Mr. Speaker. Even as we fight many other issues in this country, we want to tell NEMA that they must play their role. The people of Twage cannot continue to suffer simply because they are benefiting from it. Because, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, even if this Twage dam comes into operation, yet the people have died. What will be the benefit to them, Mr. Speaker? So we need to agree that the issue of Twage dam and the issue of NEMA must seize the opportunity and ensure that the people within that area don't continue to suffer. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Okay, Senator Maruma, keep them brief. Then Senator Mtula Kilonzo.
Nashukuru Mheshimiwa Spika kwa hii nafasi ulionipa ili kuchangia hili ombi lililoletwa na Mheshimiwa Mwenyekiti wa Kamati ya Mashamba, Mheshimiwa Paul Mwangi Githiomi. Ni kweli Mheshimiwa Spika, ni jukumu la serikali kupeana kila mtu shamba. Ni haki ya wananchi kuishi katika hali ya kuheshimika. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna IDPs wengi mahali kwingi, watu wanaoishi katika hali ya uchochole wakiwa hawana mashamba. Najua hili ombi litaenda kwa kamati yangu ya mashamba na nafikiri tutalivalia njuga hili swala ili tuangalie katika sehemu tofauti tofauti za Kenya wananchi ambao hawana mashamba na tusukume serikali iwape mashamba. Mheshimiwa Spika, tulienda hadi Laikipia wakati mwingine na kamati ya mashamba kuangalia wananchi waliotupwa kutoka msitu wa Marmanet na wakatoa barabarani, wanaishi katika hali mbaya sana. Hali tuliyoiona pale, Mheshimiwa Spika, ilikuwa ni ya kuhuzunisha ajabu. Ajabu ni kwamba mpaka sasa wale watu bado wanaishi katika ile hali, hawajapewa mashamba. Na kuna mashamba mengi Kenya, Mheshimiwa Spika. Hii inaitwa government land. Ni jukumu la serikali lifunge buti na Wizara ya Mashamba na National Land Commission ipatie hawa wananchi mashamba yao. La pili, Mheshimiwa Spika, nikimalizia, nataka kuongea kuhusu hali ya uharaka wa kuangalia mambo ya maombi ama petitions. Kule sehemu ya Taita Taveta kuna wananchi wanaoishi area ya Mwaktau ambao walileta ombi kwa hii nyumba ya kwamba serikali ya Kenya ilipatia title deed kwa ranch na wananchi zaidi ya 10,000 saizi wanafukuzwa kutoka kwa hiyo ranch kwa sababu title deed ilipewa ranch mwaka wa 85 na hawa wananchi walianza kuishi 1919. wakati wa vita vya pili vya dunia, vita vya kwanza vya dunia. Walipigana huko na wakafanya makazi hapo. Hii petition bado haijamaliziwa na koti imepeana mpaka mwezi wa 10 hao watu watolewe kwa hiyo ardhi. Naomba wakati tunaangalia haya maombi mengine, na chairman wangu wako hapa, tuangalie zile petitions zingine pia ambazo hazijaangaliwa, ili wananchi wetu wa Kenya wapate kuishi katika hali ya amani. Singependa kusema zaidi ya hapo, Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini kushukuru Kenya na Wakenya kwa sababu ya ile confidence walio nayo, ama ile imani wako nayo na hii nyumba ya Senate, kwamba matatizo yao wakialeta hapa basi yanaangaliwa kwa uharaka. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Mtula Kilonzo Jr.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll begin with the petition by Senator Mbito. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I'm glad the chairperson of Labour, Senator Johnston Sakaja, is back with us. Mr. Speaker, the question of pensions does not affect Kenya Railways alone. It affects Kenya Post and Telecommunication. To our surprise, it also affects the workers who used to work for the East Africa Corporation. Mr. Speaker, I would urge the committee, in fact, to consider a general motion on all pensioners in the country, because pensioners of all state corporations are suffering and for plunder by their trustees. Teleposta Pension Scheme bought phantom properties. Kenya local authorities bought phantom properties. Their trustees are billionaires. The pensioners are paupers. These are criminals wearing suits, and we should punish them. Mr. Speaker, I urge that we take not just Kenya Railways, but we take all of them. And RBA, the reason why RBA was set up was to prevent such issues. Somebody works for 60 years, and after working for government or a parastatal for 60 years and getting their deductions, they become paupers. The same thing happens to members of parliament. I have proposed that members of parliament should not go to treasury for their pension. We should not beg when our money has been deducted. We should manage our pension. So the pension regime, Mr. Speaker, ought to be regulated. The petition by Senator Mwangi Githomi. Mr. Speaker, I have a statement I raised here. And that statement was given to me by people who are managing IDPs. This is the reason why IDPs have not been settled, have not been paid. There is a committee that is supposed to be set up under the Act. That committee has never been set up for the last 4 years. It's deliberate. And therefore, there is nobody to enforce the Act. And Senator Wetangula is right that we were brought a list here by a chair. And that list showed the discrimination that it is this country. Somebody evicted from one area is paid more than the other one. It's a shame. But the records are here. And I hope that we can resolve this matter as quickly as possible. The third one, on the residents of Makueni. Mr. Speaker, this matter was brought by the Chinese when they were doing the standard gauge railway. And I was telling Senator Dulo recently when she called me about these NEMA people. I said these NEMA people are the most incompetent organization in the country. I saw the minister walking around the river, somewhere here at Ngara. That is the work of NEMA. The river where Senator Sakaja knows, where we all grew up, is full of sewer in the city of Nairobi. NEMA is asleep. Mr. Speaker, there are no regulations on blasting. While NEMA has regulations on making noise, on decibels, there are no regulations in the country on blasts. And Mr. Speaker, in the case of Makueni, while people were being compensated in a 300-meter corridor, these blasts were destroying homes a kilometer from the blast. But since they don't fall within the corridor, Mr. Speaker, they were not compensated. I know people whose fish bones cracked, whose houses cracked. There's even a case of environment where The blasting created so much dust. The Chinese are operating in Kenya as if they are the law themselves. And the committee, I hope, Senator Mwangi Githiomi, you're going to use your usual fiery stand on people like this, because we need regulations. People are suffering. When you see a whole county assembly filing a petition like this one, it means the county commissioner of Makueni has been unable to deal with it. The governor of Makueni has been unable to deal with it, and it's only you now, like you did when we went for the Kibwezi-Kitui Road and Manoni Dam, where you got order from national government officials. This is one of those instances. You not only save the people of Makueni, but the people of Narok, because the people whose houses were destroyed during the SGR construction, and it must be happening along the railway line wherever they are going, have never been compensated. We cannot allow this. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Ephraim Maina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I like to support the two petitions, and I'll start with the Senator Mwangi Githiomi's petition. Mr. Speaker, the matter being raised by Mr. Mwangi Githiomi cuts across almost everywhere in the country. It's not just in Nyandarua. But, Mr. Speaker, we have a country, we have a government that failed to protect people. For example, during the clashes, 1992, I don't know, 207, other people were displaced from their duly owned land, Mr. Speaker. And these people went and camped on the roadside, camped everywhere, actually going back to what was supposed to be their original place, Mr. Speaker. This matter was a matter that the government should have handled, and since it was not handled to conclusiveness, it should be handled today. Mr. Speaker, in this region here, let me say in Central Province, there are many families who are rendered destitute, who are rendered into poverty through this process. And there was resources given, as Senator Batagula has brought up, and it is actually mind-boggling. Why, Mr. Speaker? People should have been suffering. Even the criminals who misappropriated the money, nothing has ever been done. Mr. Speaker, we cannot run Kenya like it is. Mr. Speaker, regarding own home area, I can tell you, people who are displaced, chased away from the forest, who used to be under the Chaba system, they are living on the roadside in some areas, like in an area called Teto, Kiadogoro. They are still living there, years after years after years, Mr. Speaker. The government, in whatever else is doing, there is no development that is greater than enabling a human being to live a decent life and actually be able to actually survive without any aid. But rather, a government should feel extremely guilty where, by acts of omission or whatever action, they make human beings become destitute, human beings who own the land. And Mr. Speaker, when this commission is going around, I would like them to look at one thing about IDP specifically. The IDPs own the properties in some areas, Mr. Speaker. And if we have a country by the rule of law which protects the sanctity of the title, for example, truly, either these properties are sold and the original owners are compensated, or, Mr. Speaker, if we are seriously having a peaceful situation, let them be enabled to go back into those areas, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we cannot be double speaking. We are here for the livelihood of the people. Forget anything else we are doing. Development are not big planes flying around. Development are not tarmac roads going around. Development is when the ordinary person can be able to feed his family, when the ordinary person is living a decent life, the ordinary person can go to a hospital, get medicine. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this matter is so central and is so deep into the issues of democracy and the issues of justice that I want this committee to reconsider. Even if they need to enlarge the committee, but have actually come up with a report that would be conclusive and demanding from the government immediate action. Let it not just come another report which will gather dust somewhere, Mr. Speaker. The people in Nyandarua, I sympathize with them. The people of Laikipia, I sympathize with them. The people in Western Kenya, I sympathize with them. The people in Nyanza, I sympathize with them, who are all displaced during the so-called clashes, which were investigated by us leaders. No ordinary person can go instigating some of this violence. It is instigated by us leaders, Mr. Speaker. And the worst thing that we did was to ignore and forget those people to live in misery. Some of them have died, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say that I hope when the report comes, it should be acted upon, Mr. Speaker. And if there is anybody who has misappropriated resources that was supposed to settle the people.
What's your point of order, Senator Khaniri?
Mr. Speaker, I have tremendous respect for the senator on the floor, the senator from Kirinyaga. But, Mr. Speaker, this House is guided
Senator from Nyeri.
From Nyeri, sorry. From Nyeri, sorry. Senator from Nyeri, Senator Ephraim Maina. We have our standing orders that guide debate in this House. This is a petition. It's not a motion. It's not a bill. Mr. Speaker, standing order number 231, it's very clear on comments on petition that such comments will not exceed 30 minutes. So if there's one senator will take 20 minutes speaking, then what will happen to the other senators, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, this has to be controlled.
Okay, but
Okay.
Mr. Kaniri, I've not spoken.
Senator Khaniri.
Oh, Senator Kaniri, I've not spoken in the many words you keep throwing into this House. I've only spoken a pitiful of the words you speak. And I'm not a man of many words. And I'm coming to the end, Mr. Speaker.
Conclude.
Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, and I'm not concluding because I was rudely disrupted. No. I'm concluding because I recognize there are some of us who are slower and we need to carry them along with us, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying, let us be sympathetic, let us look at the lives of the people who have been displaced, including the people, some of them who may be from Senator Kaniri's place, and justice be done. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, we are running out of time on petitions, so I'll only allow Dr. Zani. Then we go to other statements. Dr. Zani. Okay, take the shortest time possible so that I can see there's a lot of interest, but we must move. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think a lot already has been said, and quite a bit of it is going to be repetition. Some time back, I had a chance to talk about statelessness in one of the forums that I went to. This is not about statelessness, but it is about displacement, which is just as bad. Because when you don't have a sense of identity, when you don't feel you belong, when inequality is very, very high, when you cannot contribute functionally as a person to a country, then it is a problem. It's really sad that for this particular country, Nyandarua, it's come to the fore. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure many other counties have the same situation. I plead that as this committee interrogates this issue, that they probably try to address this on a broad scale so that they can identify and have this situation sorted once and for all. Mr. Speaker, I think it has gone on for far too long, and Senator Githiomi, we are happy that you've been able to bring it to the table, the committee really needs to do a good job so that they can establish for us a sense of being, a sense of integrity, a sense of self-esteem that every Kenyan is actually meant to have in this country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kabaka, 2 minutes, and Senator Ochilo Ayako, what is your point of order from winning? Senator Kabaka. Kabaka.
My brother, it is me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to contribute to this important statement. Petition, slip of tongue, by my friend, Senator for Nyandarua, Senator Gidiomi, very experienced senator, having served both in the National Assembly and the Senate for some time. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to repeat what has been said. That would be tautological. I only need to state that, yes, I need to say that this issue of refugees in their own states or in their own country is very touchy, and is no different from the international refugees. Like we've had refugees suffering even in their own camps. But of necessity, the issue which I need to state is that, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of this land. That issue which has been pinpointed by several senators before, who spoke before me. And I think it's high time that the other agencies of the government be involved to investigate who took what or who took which land. Money is not everything here. Some people might have been compensated in monetary terms, are sentimentally attached to their land, because that is the land they know, which they were born, perhaps. The second issue touches on the Kenya Railways pensioners, retirement benefit pensioners scheme. It is very emotive. I'm saying so, for those who don't know, I've worked in railway for 9 years. And it's a very big letdown to the pioneers of Kenya Railways, East African Railways, then Kenya Railways. They worked hard for these parastatal, these institutions, and even other related parastatals like the defunct KPLC, Kenya Post and Telecommunication, which demerged to 3 agencies. So what I'm saying here is that the mismanagement of these funds, which enormously totals to billions of Kenyan shillings, is very sad. And I think there is collusion between those in management, the actuarial bodies which run today affairs of the scheme. And Mr. Speaker, therefore, as I conclude, for other senators to speak, I am saying that the corruptions in this country is too much, and therefore it's important even people should revisit their moral concerns. I support Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Ochilo Ayako, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my point of order is that we are very lonely in the other chambers. We've been trying to catch your attention, and seemingly all the members here are the ones visible, except only Senator Maruma. So my point of order is, you had indicated that I come from wherever I am, so I've come from where I am so that you are able to recognize me.
Can you then make your contribution? 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me an opportunity and to recognize that there is another chamber nearby. Mr. Speaker, there are 2 petitions here, one regarding pensions and another regarding internally displaced persons. Mr. Speaker, there are many factors that cause internal displacement of people, but the one that is sensitive and the one that most people speak to is one that is caused by politicians. There are factors that do this, economic factors, operations of the law, disaster, but we never try and settle our people who are displaced because of economic factors or factors that are disaster. In the county where I come from, Migori County, we have incessant flooding, we have the lake, reclaiming land, and many people are displaced year in, year out. The response we get from government time and again is that these people should move to high grounds. Mr. Speaker, I want to beg the committee to which this petition is being taken to also consider discussing internal displacement of persons caused by factors other than political disagreements or violence. Now, Mr. Speaker, regarding pension, the elephant in the room is pension in counties, particularly pensions that relate to former local authorities. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at all these counties, you will find out that there is no pension that is being prepared for retirees. If you look at counties, particularly the ones that have sugar milling plants that are state-owned, Mumias, Sony, Chemelil, the employees have not been paid for 1 year. I doubt whether their pension is being looked into and whether they are likely to get their pension when they retire. I want to request the committee to which this petition is being taken to ensure that they look at all the pensions in light of the fact that COVID. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Senator Musurube, 2 minutes. And honorable senators, let us observe social distancing. I notice that we are slowly getting back into our normal operations. Please, COVID is real. Yes, Senator Musurube.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make my contributions. And Honorable Speaker, I want to really support the two senators, Senator Githiomi and Senator Mbito, for their petitions, because these are petitions that are revolving around people. And when you look at our motto, Honorable Speaker, the Senate motto revolves around the society and people, and that actually tells that we must represent people effectively. Honorable Speaker, concerning the petition of Senator Githiomi, in fact, when you are branded an IDP, that always a negative thought about someone. There is need, Honorable Speaker, for us to ensure that IDPs are given placement, and even when it comes to compensation, Honorable Speaker, the compensation of IDPs should be standard across the board, Honorable Speaker. There should not be that there are some IDPs who are getting less than others because they are all affected, and it's a painful thorn to all of the flesh, a painful thorn in the flesh of all IDPs, regardless of where they come from. Honorable Speaker, concerning the petition of Senator Mbito, it is a very viable petition, Honorable Speaker. These people, these members of staff who have already retired, they worked for Kenya Railways when they were energetic, they gave all their lives, and eventually their pension has been, swindled by people. Honorable Speaker, it is really painful that during your youthful years, you are doing a lot of work, you are giving your best, and when you're giving your best, you're hoping that your retirement would be okay. But it is unfortunate that somebody cunning is hoping that you'll give your best so that he benefits from your sweat. Honorable Speaker, there is need for this petition to be taken to a conclusion, because in 2013, this petition also was addressed by the court, but whatever verdict that the court gave was not honored. Honorable Speaker, justice should not be delayed. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Fatuma Dulo, keep it short, senators.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be very short. Number one, I wanted to contribute to the pension. Mr. Speaker, as my colleagues have said, the former local authority members of staff, they are really discriminated. The trustees are taking the huge chunk of their savings from them. I think that matter really quickly needs to be resolved, and I hope the committee will look into that. Number two, issues of IDPs. There was a lot of disparity in terms of how the budget was allocated or the money was allocated. And a very good example is my own county, where people living in Kenya from post-election violence, up to now, they have not been compensated. Finally, Mr. Speaker, issues of land is emotive. It's not only the IDP of 2007 post-election violence. There are so many Kenyans who are actually displaced. Kenyans themselves who are living in their own land today, they are being dispossessed because of the manner in which Ministry of Land is actually handling the land issues. A very good example is Yolo County, where we had a petition and a statement before the Lands Committee. This matter has not been resolved up to now. Today in my own county, the county government is giving letters of allotment without actually subjecting the list of the beneficiaries to the communities to look at it and see whether they are affected or not. I think matters of land needs to be handled with a lot of seriousness that it deserves in this country. I thank you.
Senator Ledama. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I'll be very brief. I rise to support the three petitions, and I'd like to request the committee that will be tasked with petition number 3, that has to do with the blasting of dams, to extend their work to the blasting of, or the source of materials for the construction of the SGR railway. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are so many people who were admitted in hospitals. They paid serious bills. Some of them have permanent damages to their health. When the SGR was being constructed, particularly in Narok County, in a place called Sia Bay, where children, an orphanage, where children live there in the mercy of other people, yet they were allowed to continue blasting and getting the material. Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue of NEMA. NEMA is devolved, you know, and I think county governments are now failing in ensuring that NEMA carries out their function. And it behooves us as members of this House who represent counties to ensure that we push NEMA to guarantee a good environment for our citizens. Number two, Mr. Speaker, sir, on this issue of IDPs. I'm a firm believer that before someone becomes an IDP, they have a home. So the government ought to ensure that those people who were evicted from their homes, their original homes, due to the issue of political instability in the country, are facilitated to be able to be returned back to their home. And finally, Mr. Speaker, on this issue of pension, it is evil for people to spend money, which is money that has been contributed by civil servants, by Kenyans, people who are working. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, because I see the time is up, I'd like to propose that the committee comes up with serious recommendations for setting up
Your time is up.
various civil and criminal.
Your time is up, Senator Ledama. What's your point of intervention, Senator?
Mr. Speaker, although the Honorable Senator has left the floor, but it will be wrong for it to be on record because he stated that NEMA is devolved. It is not. If you look at fourth schedule, NEMA and the protection of environment is under the national government, and it's item number 22. So it better. They only have field offices, but it's not devolved. It will be wrong for it to be on record that NEMA is devolved.
It's true. That's the position. You can read it later, Senator Ledama. We don't have a lot of time. You are off the mic. Are you reading a different document?
We have engaged NEMA, and NEMA themselves have devolved their services. Okay? So if
they have decentralized, Senator Ledama. Finally, Senator Wambua.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity to comment on this statement. The petitions, I will be very brief, but I must inform my friend, Senator Fonaro, that there's a difference between centralization and devolution.
Consult in law terms, Honorable Senator.
Mr. Speaker, on the matter of the petition that you read from residents of Makueni, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this is a very unfortunate situation. unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, because the reason why people in this country petition this House is because they expect that their matters will be processed and they will get results. It's the same reason why members here bring statements to the floor. The Speaker, the matter of pollution arising from blasting in construction sites across this country has been a thorn in the flesh of communities neighboring capital projects. In Kitui, along the Kibwezi Kitui Road, there have been several cases which have been brought to the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, given to the Committee on Roads and Transportation, where I sit. The Speaker, to date, those people are awaiting results. The Speaker, I was going to be standing to comment on this matter and say, going forward, Mr. Speaker, I will urge the Chair, the Speaker of the Senate, to ensure that the Speaker directions that are given on statements, on petitions, on motions, the Speaker, they are implemented to the letter, because this is the only way that we are going to heighten public confidence in the Senate, so that we are not just seen as a talking house. We are a house of record. We are a serious house, Mr. Speaker, for legislation and representation. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Bomet, what is your... You know, not everybody can... we have really overshot our time. I'll give you an opportunity during statements which are just coming. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 2321, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Land, Environment, and Natural Resources. So in terms of Standing Order 2322, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. On the petition on railway staff, Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 2321, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. In terms of Standing Order 232, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate.